Okay. I have been looking for this thing for 3 weeks. And I just saw it because I was at the right angle to see it was behind 3 bottles jammed into a corner. This is the original medallion of mine from when I started the school, as in the first medallion we ever gave out. It's got the things worn off on it and all the various editions. We don't even do this chain anymore. Sorry. I'm Daniel. Welcome to the Whiskey Vault. I'm Chancellor of Wizard Academy Whiskey Marketing School. Today we are drinking a hidden dram, something that you will likely not be able to get your hands on, although they do ship, I've heard. And this is St. Augustine Distillery, which is in St. Augustine, Florida, which makes sense. And this is a gift from Brian Rand, one of our whiskey sommeliers. Thank you, Brian. He dropped it off at one of the classes. I think it was actually when we were doing the EWA, the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy classes. And I got to try it then, but I wanted to do it on the show because it's interesting, and I like highlighting the craft guys. And I actually am a big fan of what St. Augustine is doing as a distillery and like their whole vibe. I don't know them. I've never been there. But like just reading up on them they're anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. They're really committed to sustainability and local donations and nonprofits, and yeah, it's very cool. So this, I don't know what the bourbon is, but this is part of their Explorer series where they did barrel finishings, and this is an Armagnac finished bourbon. Now, I think their straight bourbon is Florida barley, Florida wheat, and Florida corn, or Florida corn, Florida wheat, barley from somewhere. I think their normal straight bourbon is 60% Florida corn, 22% barley, 18% wheat, which means barley is almost the flavoring grain versus the wheat. That's really interesting to me, to make the barley the second most common grain in a mash bill. That's not very common. And I don't know that that's what this is, because it doesn't say on their website or anywhere, but they did say they took their bourbon and they put it into a finishing cask, an Armagnac finishing cask, and this for 4 years and then 6 months in Armagnac. 4-year-old bourbon, 6 months Armagnac. It smells like Armagnac. And it smells like bourbon. And I like that because so often you either get one or the other. You either get somebody who put whiskey into a finishing barrel for so long that it's, or so fresh of a barrel that it might as well just be the finishing thing. Or you get people who like, we finished this and that, and try as hard as you possibly can. You cannot find it in the nose or the palate, and you're like, maybe I could be convinced that it might. It's like, oh, that's a really used whatever barrel you just put that into. But this, I get both. If you pick it up, first instinct is a super densely sweet bourbon. First instinct, bourbon, and corn's very strong. It's a little earthy. It's so earthy that I wonder what their cuts are, if cuts are called, but it's something that I feel like in another 2 or 3 years, that back end earthy grain note might have softened a little. It'd be very interesting to try it at 6, 7 years old. But right now, it's still a little green. But around all of that corn dust and that sort of green vegetal note, there's this rolling in hard candy, I don't know, apricot, plum. I love Armagnac. If you're ever curious as a whiskey drinker about exploring beyond what you know about whiskey, or just, taking a break from whiskey for a night, you can get really dramatic age statement Armagnac for shockingly low prices. Comparatively, compared to whiskey. I'll tell you about Armagnac in a second. Berries, vanilla cream. The longer it sits, the sweeter it gets, but the more it becomes more bourbon and less Armagnac. In the smell, anyway. I am going to say, ooh, tangy. That's weird. It rolled in bourbon, then shifted gears into a dense Armagnac sweetness, and then rolled back out with this like tannic tart note that's lingering, like a tart juicy fruit. Woo! 57.48%. Let's add a little water and see what that does. Where's my, oh. So, I'm going to say, on first instincts, whoever finished this and made the choice on when it was ready just freaking nailed it. Because that Armagnac and bourbon is just perfectly balanced in this. Like, it's definitely bourbon. I definitely sense the Armagnac. And neither are dominating. They're both sort of filling in the crevices that the other leaves. That's a really well-finished bourbon. Great job. Armagnac is a brandy, a type of brandy and it differs from cognac in a couple of ways. One, there can be some different grapes. There's an overlapping grape in cognac and Armagnac. But also, primarily, region and distillation, right? And distillation is pretty dominant in this one. Distillation in Armagnac is in a column still. Now, I don't want you to think a vodka column. An Armagnac column is not like 30 plates and 10, 20 stories tall. An Armagnac column is a little more fat, a little more stubby, and it's not focused on stripping all the flavor out like a vodka. It's focused on maintaining a kind of thicker, oilier profile. So actually between cognac, even though cognac is double pot stilled, more like Scotch, right? 2 pot stills, but they make cuts, right? Armagnac is just run through a column still and then you keep it. And surprisingly for whiskey drinkers, it has the opposite effect. Cognac, a little lighter, a little gentler touch, a little Armagnac, denser, oilier, fuller bodied. And so I've always found that whiskey drinkers that I know, if they're a Scotch smoky or a big barrel bourbon drinker, you tend to prefer the Armagnacs before you fall into the cognacs because they're just heftier, weightier. And I don't know how they're distilling. I forgot to look that up. But I am getting a lot of oil, a lot of richness. I'm hoping that water sort of flushes that out a little bit. It pushed the green grass note forward. And it shoved the cherries and dark fruit note slightly behind. Right in the glass, it gets more bourbon now. And on the edge of the glass, on the edges of the nose, it gets more Armagnac, like it pushed it outside, like the oils of the Armagnac were pushed to the fringes. Yeah. Way better without water added. Maybe if it settled for a little bit, but it's sort of like it brought that tart astringency right into the middle of the palate instead of only the finish, and it pushed all the berries and cream soft sweetness out and gone. And so now all I get is this like sort of dried dusty corn finishing in this super tart fruit. I liked it better when the ethanol was carrying more flavor compounds. It's still good, but it was better balanced. And I don't know if they proofed it to this or if this is cask strength. Did they just call it cask strength? It doesn't say. Well, what the proof it was in there in the bottle at, which is 57.48, that was great. That was the right call. Too much water, it flattened it out. And now it's just kind of grainy on the nose. It's starting to soften again. Oh, there we go. With a little bit of time, the fruit moves back in again. So if I had added water and let this settle, I'm probably fine. I think it's probably around 50 now, and that's a great place for the palate to be without struggling for me, personally. Nose was better at a higher proof. But it's interesting, and they're doing good work. And Brian, I appreciate this is going into the vault. And St. Augustine, thank you for making great whiskey. And to you guys, I'm really glad you're here. Cheers. If you like whatever, if you like big medallions on people giving you opinions about random craft distilleries, this is your channel, my friends. Like and subscribe.